And basically, I really didn't change anything. I went with the same phone script, and I used the basic phone script. This one here. I don't know if you can see that now.
Hold
Probably
it up
not.
and yeah.
It's the basic Equus phone script. And when I do my call, excuse me, basically I'll, say hello, Jim, or whoever the client is. I'll say, this is Eric, calling about the request you sent in. And I basically always name the bank and the amount of the loan. And then I mention that it's about the mortgage, life, and disability coverage. You know, then I go into I'm the guy that goes over the information and the options. And the only change I really made is I said, well, we have several different options right now. And, the most popular one right now is the Zoom conference call. And then I say, well, you could also do a telephone consultation. And then I mention the other video, I can't think of the start video. And I kind of just sit and wait and see what they say. And typically they'll say, yeah, I heard of Zoom, and I've done a Zoom presentation, or they've been on Weight Watchers with Zoom or something like that. And I just pretty much go from there, and I schedule the appointment that way.
So you said you give them three options. The first is the Zoom.
And then I say a phone consultation, but I say the phone consultation isn't as popular as the Zoom. I kind of clarify that the Zoom is the most popular, because I really don't want to do a phone consultation because they're harder to sell, because I want to get them on the video. You know what I mean? And then you can also offer the start meeting, right? Is that what it's called, Brian?
Yeah. Where's the website link?
Yeah, I'm not quite as familiar with that one. I've only done Zoom. This is actually my third Zoom call, to be honest with you.
All right. So you basically lead off after you've kind of verified their information and went ahead, and when you're going into, setting the appointment, you're just giving them the three options. That's been kind of the difference, is you're saying that they, now they have three options to do it. So you allow them to pick.
Yeah. And I hope they pick the Zoom, and I kind of try to push them towards that, to be honest with you, if they don't.
Yeah. Well, do you feel like there's any value going to offering that start meeting, or is that just because that's kind of what you've been hearing on the other trainings?
Yeah, I've been hearing that on the other trainings, and if they have it already downloaded on their computer, I would just jump in and adapt, and I would load the start meeting on my computer, and I would figure it out by the time I had their meeting scheduled, just to make it easier on them.
Yeah. But have you had any pushback on people not wanting to get Zoom?
No, none at all. No.
Yeah. And the reason I like Zoom is because it's all over the news right now. Is everybody's heard of Zoom. So I think it's a lot more trusted than a lot of other things out there. Yeah. So what kind of, are you getting any resistance on the phone with people wanting to book it, or what kind of objections are you getting?
Basically with the Zoom, I'm getting the appointments that I've had with the Zoom, people will forget, and I'll be sitting waiting on the appointment, and I'll call them and I'll say, hey, we had a Zoom appointment, and they'll be, oh, I forgot. And I'll be like, okay, well, can we reschedule it for a couple hours later today? And they're like, sure, yeah, sorry about that. And they'll be very apologetic. And I rescheduled the one for 3:00 the same day. And the other one I had actually today did the same thing. They forgot, but they were apologetic, and we rescheduled. But the overall meeting worked out well. You know what I mean? After we rescheduled, but both of them did forget.
Yeah.
But I was able to reschedule both of them. So that was the main thing. I'm not really getting any resistance, but when it comes to them actually being there on time, that's maybe the resistance of them forgetting. But I'm trying to come in and say, hey, it's okay. Don't worry about it. We can talk in a couple hours. It's not a problem at all. And they're like, okay, so I'm so sorry I missed you, and stuff like that,
Right. And then it's kind of, let's go ahead and talk about the in-home, I guess, if you will. So once you're on there with the Zoom with them, walk us through what's different, how you started out, what you show them, and all that kind of stuff.
Okay. All right. I'll walk you through it. I'll put up basically the first thing that I do is I try to build rapport, and let's see here. That's the first thing I do, is build rapport, basically. Can you see that? Am I sharing anything right now, Brian?
No, we can't see anything right now.
Basically the first thing, yeah, I try to build rapport. I do a little small talk, and then, you know, hey, where are you from? How you doing? You know, things of that nature. And, you know, and that doesn't take usually more than like 2 or 3 minutes. I do that. And then I go into this, I'll show them this form, and I have this downloaded already. Can you see that?
No.
Okay.
While you're doing that, have you found that people are intolerant of you not knowing exactly what to do? Like you're still kind of
Like I'm
fumbling
doing
around
right
to
now.
figure it out?
No, they're very patient because this is I'm kind of learning right now too. So yeah, no, they're not. I'm like, yeah, just kind of be patient with me. I'm learning it. And this is exactly what I'm doing. If I do with a regular client, but
So there's no point of being scared or not thinking that you know something good enough. Really, it's
no,
just a matter of diving in and doing it.
yeah, this is actually my third appointment, to be honest with you. This is the third time I've ever done this. So,
Okay.
okay. But anyway, what I do is I go right into this and I put this form up. Okay. And can you see that?
It's popping up. Give it a second. Okay.
Okay. Okay. Can you see that? So I would ask the clients, I'd say, these are actually the clients that I just sold. Um, I'd say, Warren and Joyce, can you see that form up there? And they would say, yeah, I see that. And then I try to go back. I go, do you remember filling that form out? And they would be like, yeah. I'd be like, okay. Do you remember why you filled it out? And they would say, yeah. Then I go, could you go back to the moment that you filled it out? And this is actually what I say. And they'll be like, yeah. And I'm like, well, what were you thinking when you filled it out? And they'll say something like, well, I was just curious, or, you know, I just wanted some information, or I was really concerned if if my spouse died, what I would do. And then my next question would be basically, so if your spouse lost their income, could they pay their mortgage? And then I would get an answer from that. Okay. Does that make sense?
Yep. So you just have their PDF. What do you have? It. You have all
Yeah, I have
PDFs pulled
all.
up and stuff.
Yeah, I basically have everything pulled up. So everything is loaded on my end that I want to share. Okay. And actually, I
Okay.
skipped one thing. Let's see here. Actually, I would have done this first. I jumped a little ahead.
All right. So let's backtrack because I really want people to be able to see kind of
Okay.
how
I
you've
I
prepared.
jumped ahead.
Okay.
Uh,
That's okay.
Basically,
So before the meeting, before you give them a call, this is what you're doing.
yeah, I'm loading all this stuff. Yeah, all this is loaded. Yeah. My license, my presentation is sitting next to me. The form is loaded. Um, the living benefits guide, which I can go through all that. What I
Yeah.
do is,
I do want to briefly go through all that.
okay, do you want me to do it as I go, or just say
Yeah.
everything?
Let's pretend like we have a real appointment.
Okay, all right. Okay, so I'll go back a little bit. Basically what you want to do is, you want to show them your license. Can you see that?
Right now, we just see your files.
Okay. Let me go to.
And all you're doing right now on Zoom is clicking the share screen button, right? And you just pull it up.
Yeah.
Yep.
Can you see
Yeah,
the
pretty
license
easy.
now?
Okay, so we see your licenses.
Okay, so I show them that to build some credibility and say, I'm licensed both in South and North Carolina.
So let's walk that back. So we've started the Zoom call.
Okay.
We small talked a little bit, correct?
Yeah, we small talk. Then I show them the license.
Okay, then you pulled this up. Okay, now go.
Okay. Then I jump to the next form, and I go to. Let me take 1 second here. I have to go. Okay, can you see that form?
Yep.
Okay.
So you just have these all opened up in one folder.
Yeah, they're all opened. And I jump to this form, and then I kind of go back and I'll ask them, do you remember filling out this form? Was it William and Joyce? Obviously I'll remember their names before I say that, and they'll be like, yeah, I remember filling it out. And I'll ask which one filled it out. And then I'll ask them why. And then I'll try to go back to that moment. And Brantley, I think, actually told me this, you know, to go back to the moment when they actually filled it out. You know, try to bring them back to when they filled it out, and ask them what they were thinking when they filled it out. And then you
Okay.
usually get some kind of response.
Right.
Then I go into basically, you know, if you lost your spouse, or you know, and they lost their income, I mean, could you pay the mortgage? And I ask them both the same question. And a lot of times they say yes, but then I'll say something like, well, yeah, could you pay the mortgage, but could you pay it comfortably? You know, you say you can pay it, but is it going to take every dime, you know, or is it going to really stretch you thin? And then I'll say something like, well, you know, then you could see the need to have extra insurance, right? And they'll say, yeah. So then I kind of jump ahead. I'll put up my, this is actually my presentation. Can you see that?
Yep. So that's what you have printed out beside you.
Yeah. Can you see that on the screen?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is what I have printed out. I don't show them this, but I read this. Then I'm going to jump ahead. And then, you know, once I actually say those questions, I'll basically say, I'm a field underwriter. My job is to explain to you the process, you know, and hopefully make you understand it. And my ultimate goal, and I actually don't read all this, I jump around a little bit. And basically, my ultimate goal is to make sure to find something that fits your budget today. And I actually jump ahead and I leave a little of this out, believe it or not. And I say, you know, and we would like to get you covered today. You know, that's what I usually say. But you could
Okay.
read the whole thing. And I actually, believe it or not, I sit here and actually read this script, even in person. I read it in front of them, and they'll actually sit there and watch me read it, and they don't seem to say anything, you know, because I can't remember this, so I just read it, you
Yeah.
know. And it's as a guide. I leave it sitting right next to me on the table. I don't think they know I'm reading it online, but, and then I go over the companies, you know, I go over the insurance companies, you know, I mention all these companies, and then I'll ask them, you know, I'll say all these companies are AAA rated. I usually don't mention Mutual of Omaha because I don't write Mutual of Omaha.
Uh-huh.
Um, and then I'll ask them a question. You know, the next question would be, once we get past that, I'd go, have you ever handled any of your loved ones' arrangements? And, you know, and you know, most of the time they'll say yes. And I'll say, well, what was that like? I mean, were they covered? Did they have insurance? And they'll usually give me an answer, and they'll say, yeah, they had coverage. And I'll say, well, did that make it a little easier? And they'll say, you know, they'll usually say yes. And I'll be like, okay, great. So you can see the value in having insurance, and can't you? And usually they'll say yes. You know, both of them will agree, you know, so that's what I want to get them to start saying yes to seeing the value in it. Um, and the next one I skip usually, but you know, you could ask that. Um, then this one I always ask. Um, when you pass away, who do you want to take over the house? You know, and they'll usually laugh and they'll say my wife. And then I'll ask, you know, what do you think they'll do with it? Then they laugh again usually. And
Yeah.
they'll, well, I want to keep it. And then I'll go, well, and then I'll say something like, well, you know, you said you could pay the mortgage, right? But just barely. So you see the need to have more insurance, right? And see the value in it, right? And they'll be like, yeah, I do. Okay. And then the next question, sometimes I read them and sometimes I don't. You know, it depends on if I think they're ready and they've answered the two questions where they can see the value, I'll kind of jump past that and I'll get right into the health questions. You know, if I get them to say yes twice on being able to see the value in having the coverage, I think that it's almost sold. Do you know what I'm saying, Brian?
Yeah. Yep.
Like you don't have to really hard sell it at that point. So I go, and then I'll say, well, I'm going to go over the health questions. I don't have those loaded, but
That's fine. We don't need to go over those.
yeah. And then I'll say something like, you know, I don't know if you're going to qualify, but you possibly could, you know? So I'll go over it. And then
Yep.
after I go over the health questions, I'll go, it looks like, you know, I've got good news. It looks like you'll both qualify. And then at that point, excuse me, I actually don't have any numbers pulled, but I'll make an assumption and I'll plan on trying to write them under equity protector. And usually I have their ages and I will have the numbers typed up. I'll pick 3 numbers and I'll be able to pull those up and show them those numbers on this screen. and then I'll just wait. Or actually, I do it two different ways. I'm kind of jumping around here. I'm sorry. Sometimes I use this option, but you don't have to all the time. Am I confusing this, Brian, you think?
It's okay. It's okay.
Okay. Sometimes I'll jump right into the numbers, okay, if I think that they're ready to go. But sometimes I'll also use this option, and this is from Brandon Hall. Most of this is actually from Brandon Hall. And I'll read this. The first option, is the most expensive, and it covers a large portion of your mortgage, and it's the least popular. The second is somewhat popular, and that would be the second price. If you think that you're going to have a little more trouble selling them, I go into this a little deeper. And then the last one you can kind of read for yourself, but it says, it pays the mortgage payments. Basically, it'll give you like a year's worth of mortgage payments.
It's your critical period.
Yeah, that's your critical period. But sometimes you don't need to use that. You can, if you've got them to answer that they can see the value in having insurance twice, pretty much that tells me that they want to buy it, and they're ready.
Yeah, you just make the assumed sale because this is an assumed sale.
Yeah, basically. Yeah, I assume that they're ready. So I give them the pricing. And then when I give them the pricing, I'm going to have another button up here. I actually don't have the pricing, but
you just show them the price. What are you writing it on a?
Well, actually, I jumped ahead again. I'm sorry. See, this is all new to me. So I'm sorry. I skipped two things in the presentation. Okay. Okay, I jumped ahead to that. Okay, let's go back to over the health questions. Let's go back to that, and then I'll go back into the other option. I skipped ahead. After the health questions, I go to this. Can you see that?
Yep, so you're asking the health questions. Now you're jumping to show them this.
Health questions, yeah. And then I go, okay. And I use this as this kind of like a corny looking thing, and I didn't think I'd use it, but it kind of works good actually, because it's a visual and it explains the insurance. And basically I'll get my cursor and I'll circle this and the death benefit, and I'll be like, this is the old type of insurance. What we're offering is the new type of insurance. It carries these riders: terminal, critical, chronic, covers your future conditions, all your pre-existing conditions, and you could qualify for accidental death benefit ×2. There's no medical exam. They just check your prescription history. We check the medical information bureau. I'm the field underwriter, and then we'll submit an application after we look at the pricing. And that kind of just explains it a little bit. Then I jump to this form. Okay. And then I'll say, I've quoted you GPM, Equity Protector Classic 1. And then I'll go over here and I'll point with can you see my cursor? Can you see
yep.
Okay, I'll go, this is the critical part of the living benefits. And I'll say it pretty much exactly like this. I'll say, we're going to use $100,000 as an example. Okay. They're like, okay, that sounds good. So I say, okay, if you were to have a heart attack, stroke, cancer, ALS, major organ failure, kidney failure, blindness due to diabetes, I pretty much just read this whole thing. And I'll say, we're going to use $100,000 as an example. If you were to, depending on the severity and, what the insurance company was willing to pay you out on that, you could get up to 100%. So using $100,000 as an example, that basically means you could get up to $100,000. Or you could take half and take 50,000 and leave 50,000 as a death benefit. Okay. Then I jump to chronic and I read chronic. I go over this. That would be 2 of your daily activities. If you could get 24% a year. So we'll use 100,000 as an example again, and this is exactly the way I say it. You could take 24,000 per year every 12 months if you're still unable to perform the 2 daily activities. And that could be from a stroke, if you can't dress yourself, if you can't feed yourself, but it has to be 2 of your daily activities. Then the last one would be the terminal. And that would be if your doctor called you and said, Warren, this would be the guy I worked with the other day, calls you or contacts you and said, Warren, you have 24 months to live, and gives you bad news. And in that case, except in Florida, you could get a cash payout or, a check, obviously, of up to the full 100%. and we'll use $100,000 as an example. And I say that over again, and I always use 100,000. And then I said, you could take up to 100, or you could cash out 50, and then leave 50 as a death benefit. Does that make sense, Brian?
Yep. Nope. I like that.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's good visuals.
Yeah, and I use the visuals, and the reason I always say 100 is because it sounds funny, but then when I go to present it, they usually pick 100.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of our sales psychology, we've just kind of tried to boil it down and make it easy. But I mean, if you really want to dig into the art of the sale, all these little tricks can really help.
Yeah, we keep going over 100, and then I don't really go into the bottom, but I'll say something like, you could read over this later, after we fill out the application, and I'm going to leave a copy of this with you so you can go over these statistics, because most people will live if they have a heart attack, and the statistics are down here and they prove that, if you have a heart attack, I mean, if you go, I don't really read over these, but you could if you wanted to.
Yeah.
But then I jump to pricing. I immediately go to pricing, and then I usually, I present each. I made the mistake of presenting both people at once a few times, and I don't think it's a good idea. I think it's good to present one at a time. Like, don't give them both the numbers. Give maybe it depends. I mean, you could do it, pick one person and give them the numbers, then talk to them, then have them look at those numbers. And then I usually present the man's numbers first, because then, the spouse is usually a little lower.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
oh, your numbers are lower, and then I just let them look at the numbers, and then I'll wait a minute, and then I'll say, do those numbers look like they fit your budget? And then I'll just be quiet, and I'll wait for them to respond. And they'll either say yes or no. And usually they just say yes. And I'm like, okay, and then, do you want to take an application? Then let's go ahead and take the application. And sometimes I'll get some resistance, and sometimes I won't. Like, sometimes they'll want to think about it. And like the last one I just sold, they really liked the numbers, but they had to attend a barbecue. And they were actually cooking food outside the window. And I'm like, well, I understand you've got a barbecue to go in 10 minutes, but the next day they signed up for both. They both got policies. So
That's perfect.
yeah, sometimes when they say they want to think about it, they really do want to think about it. And I kind of back off sometimes, but it depends. If I'm in person, I'll push a little harder to try to get it done, unless they have a really good excuse.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, cool. Well, that's I think that was real helpful. And in terms of pushing, I'd bring in Sturgis real quick. If Sturgis there, he actually found out some information today and was able to use it and apply it, as far as specifically right now America, which other people will be following suit as well. Are you there, Sturgis?
Yeah, you got me. You see me?
Yep.
Yeah, America today. You still got me?
Yeah. How are you in the light? You're in Virginia.
Do what?
You're in Virginia. How are you? How's the daytime there?
It's not.
Oh, okay.
It's called virtual background. See, if you're like no matter where you are, you can have a virtual background. So you don't have to worry about what people are seeing behind you.
Yeah.
Like people walking behind you, or, if you're outside sitting on the deck and it's a very nice day, or you're at the beach, you can have a virtual background.
That's right. Okay. So what did, tell us what you've,
America
and how you applied it.
America sent out an email to all of us earlier in the week, or last week, stating that they were going to start looking at all the applications, and the application will the electronic one right now has a question on there about, have you been exposed to, have you been quarantined, self-quarantined, or have you been confirmed a positive case of COVID-19, and within the last 60 days. And so if you check that yes, then the application is immediately pended, and you cannot reapply until you're clear for 60 days. So the way I discussed it was, I said, we just have one right now that is doing that. And several others are going to be starting to do that, because that's how the norm's going to go. And about that time, I also was talking with one couple, and I said, "Oh, great!" And I said, "Wow!" And she goes, "The lady, what?" I said, "I'm sorry, I have the stock thing on in the background on the TV, and it would just showed what the new projected death numbers were, from the COVID virus." And then she actually went in and goes, "I've heard there are like 150,000 people." I said, "Yeah, that's if we all behave and stay home." And she said, "Well, the people here in Virginia Beach," because that's where this lady was, she goes, "they weren't behaving this weekend." I said, "I know, it scares the heck out of me." And so that's when she started listening more and said, we need to talk about this a little more closely. And her husband was at his office. So we're going to redo it again tomorrow morning. He's going to be home.
Yeah. So, I mean, the fact that Americo, and because Americo, others will follow suit, is there is a sense of urgency. So even if people are, saying, let's just do it till after this is over, the stats with the amount of people that will get this, whether or not, they actually get real ill or they die, the odds of you actually getting the virus are pretty high. And if these people end up getting the virus, they may not qualify for insurance for a while. So the sense of urgency, especially on healthier people, is pretty high, maybe the highest it's ever been.
Well, here's the other aspect to that, though. I called and asked Americo about that statement late this afternoon. And the answer I got back was what I thought. And that was, they said, "Have you been quarantined or self-quarantined?" Okay. So you don't have to get the virus, but you could be exposed to someone who did get the virus. Sorry, Bailey wants to go out. And if you're asked to self-quarantine, that's what gets it to you. You get caught in that also.
Yeah.
And folks, I know 10 paramedics and 20 firefighters here in Virginia Beach who are self-quarantined right now, just because they were exposed to someone who did get it.
Yeah. So, I mean, on the phone, I would really be pushing this sense of urgency on them, especially the fact that you don't want to inconvenience them by coming to their house. You could just do it right here, like we just showed you with Rick. It really just takes 30 minutes of practicing on Zoom and getting yourself set up to where you can you have all your little presentation stuff just lined up there in a folder so that they can have a visual. And
yeah, that was the other thing I was going to say is on the Zoom and the start meeting. The start meeting probably makes it a tad bit easier because everything's sitting right there on your wallpaper. But because that's the folder you set up on start meeting, you pull all the files that you want. Say the living benefits video that the YouTube one we have.
Yep.
That had earlier that was like 10 days ago. It was out on the group me, and your other files, you can have those right there on that wallpaper. But if you're using Zoom, rather than having it to, go in and click your files to go in to find everything and people see all your files, just have a folder that says Zoom presentation.
Yep, exactly.
So,
yeah, it's really just to pick a lane, pick a product that you like. I just like Zoom. I've gotten real familiar with it. There's no right or wrong, but just pick one and stick with it. Zoom, I think has a little bit more credibility. People just heard of it more. Whether it's not any better, any worse than any of the other ones. That's just the one that's being talked about.
Yep.
So, okay. Do we have any questions? We'll open it up to both to answer any questions that you guys might have. Just unmute yourself. And if there are no questions, we can end it. But I do want to point out that I've been working. A lot of you guys are new and you still don't know where a lot of things are, the flow of things. I've been working hard to get us to get a website up for us. I don't have a lot of it done, but some of it you can utilize right now. The homepage isn't done, but I'll just go ahead and share my screen. Is going to be this new agent training center. It's on mymillennial.com, new agent training center. And you can actually go by bit by bit on this and download files. So from contracting, if you're not contracted yet, goal setting and schedules. This is probably where most of you guys would live right here, is this starting here at number 3 where it says get your bag ready. If you click there, it'll take you to, my internet's going slow. Anyway, it'll take you to bit by bit, step by step, where you can pull up mobile calculators. You can pull up all the tools that that Rick was just using, and download them, and you can kind of go bit by bit. I'll have to look at why that's not working. But, in the meantime, as you're getting ready, you could just hop on there, and I'm going to continue to build this out for our team. It's just a long process. So go to here, new agent training, and then you can kind of get your way down from here and get yourself trained up. And then if you do have any questions, just let me know. But this probably is the single best time to be in the insurance business that we'll see for a long time. You can work really old leads. You can work leads that told you no because a lot of people didn't want us in their house and they just, you couldn't get booked up. Call old leads and try to book your appointments because you could just simply do it over here. Insurance is on the top of people's minds. It's just a really good time. Not only that, but you're also getting double points for your trips. Almost everybody in this call should be set up enough to where you could qualify for the Equus trips. Other than that, if there's no questions, shoot me a text or an email or give me a call if you do. If you want to talk lead situations, how to get you some leads in your hands and all that kind of stuff, make sure you just let me know. Other than that, we'll talk to you later.